And now joining us to discuss the power outages in New Jersey is Romain, chairman of Americans for Energy Dominance, a grassroots organization dedicated to securing America's energy future. So, Sam, good afternoon to you. Can I just ask you, do you believe the outages that we saw in New Jersey, do you believe those were preventable?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you look at New York energy policy for the last 20 years, even, we've been actively shutting down good, solid generation sites, energy generation sites, with the promise of replacing them for, let's just call it solar farms, or more importantly, the offshore wind. But the economics of offshore wind have collapsed under inflation and the cost of labor. And so what ended up happening is we terminated energy generation sites prematurely with no actual backup plan. And so what we're seeing is we were 5 megawatts from brink of total collapse in New York. And for framing on that, that's basically one skyrise.
Okay, so 5 megawatts. Give us an idea of what that means, that margin right there. Describe the reliability of New York City's electric grid.
Yeah, well, and right now I would say it's in dire straits. Probably getting better now, but we went from extreme heat, right? Well, and I live in Florida, so I don't think it's too extreme heat, but it's bad planning ultimately. But 5 megawatts is really not that much power. Again, it's about one high rise worth of power, right? And if you want to compare that to a data center, for example, which there's 8 pending in the New York market right now of coming onto the grid, your average data center is pushing 3 to 500 megawatts of power, not just five. And so when you're in a situation where you only have 5 megawatts of reserve on a hot summer day, I don't know how we plan to connect 8 data centers onto the grid. It doesn't make any sense.
So you said you're in Florida. I'm in New York City right now, so it matters to me. Can you talk to us a bit more about this? How often does New York's grid operate with this narrow margin?
Quite often, actually. So you used to have a nuclear plant that provided around 25% of your power, which got shut down. And we've also, unfortunately, New York also blocked the natural gas pipelines coming in. But furthermore, New York also has some really archaic policies for just your everyday homeowners. For example, these like Tesla Powerwall batteries, these home battery backup systems, they're basically have a de facto ban in New York City. And so if you're looking at this situation saying, look, I'm lacking trust in my utility to provide power, considering what just happened and how they were prematurely shutting down parts of the grid to keep essential services online. If you wanted to break away from that and generate your own power and have your own battery backup system so you could stay online in the situation of an outage, you're actually not allowed to in New York City. And that's kind of the whole thesis of the op-ed that I wrote, is that while we're shutting down good generation and not bringing new generation online, we're simultaneously stopping homeowners from putting solar and a battery on their own private property, which to me, none of these policies make any sense.
So how much exactly would these batteries, how much electricity could they help provide New York City's grid?
Yeah, it's a hard question to answer how much they could. Well, the most important part is that they could protect you as the homeowner. So, for example, if you had your own solar system and your own battery system on your home, which you're not really allowed to have in New York City, if the grid went down, you just really wouldn't bother you personally. You might feel bad for your neighbors or for the businesses that have to lose power and maybe lose some product too, or maybe even lives lost, right? But for you on your home, the capacity of these batteries, it's enough to keep yourself online. And the peak of these summer days, the sun is shining. And so if you have your own solar system, that's fantastic. Now the benefit of the battery is that when the sun goes down, you can still remain essentially off grid, right? And so look, at some point we have to loosen up these energy policies to allow homeowners the rights on their own private property to protect themselves. At what point do we say, okay, trust in the utility system, trust in the government taking care of us is going away? We need to open the doors to allow people the right to protect themselves, much like having a garden, right? World War II victory gardens, much like having a well. Where I live, I have a well and I have a septic tank. But these things don't matter if you don't have any power. And so for the government and the utility to tell people you are not allowed to do this, that's not American.
And I read your op-ed as well, and you're saying these policies, they're not new policies. They're actually old and potentially outdated and are not keeping up with the times, right?
Very much so. Yeah, there's a common misconception, especially on the conservative side of the aisle, that Well, we're waiting for battery technology to catch up. I'm not opposed to batteries, but it's just not there yet. And I'm here to unequivocally tell you that that is false. You have fantastic companies in this country right here making American made batteries like Elon Musk and Tesla, the Tesla Powerwall. Elon Musk is arguably one of the most intelligent people we have on this planet, and he has a product, and other brands have products too, that do in fact allow a homeowner to store their own power, generate power from the sun, store it in these battery backups, and then use it at night, or more importantly, when the grid goes down. So look, in a perfect scenario, if you have thousands of homes, right? Thousands of homes that have these battery packs, these backup battery systems, ideally what happens is they network together to create a distributed power plant of sorts, right? So if you have 1,000 homes and each one has 13 kilowatt of power stored up, you can actually dispatch that power to the grid and kind of keep essential services online. And so when we have a 5 megawatt threshold, even just 1,000 batteries at 13 kilowatts makes a huge difference.
Okay, so Sam, we have these older policies. We have no new sources of energy. Amid all this, is demand for electricity growing in New York? Is it standing still or is it decreasing?
No, I think for the first time in certainly my lifetime, but probably more closer to 50 to 60 years, we are seeing explosive growth in energy demand, right? And this is due to data centers, but the issue gets exacerbated, especially when you look at like the Strait of Hormuz and our country, the United States of America, we power about 40% of our nation on LNG. And so when you have the issue in like the Strait of Hormuz, LNG prices go up, but more than that too, these data centers are creating insane levels of demand on the grid that have to be met. And so having energy policies that are restrictive rather than being additive to the grid, it's not helping our scenario. And so, look, if we take a step back and we say, look, we want to win the AI arms race against China, the number one roadblock is not manufacturing, it's not construction, it's not AI chips, it's energy. We need to take a step back from the energy policy, depoliticize it, let things work on their own economies. I'm not saying subsidize everything, but if we want to win, we need to take the chains off of the free market model and let businesses work.
Yeah, I would just add that China doesn't have these chains that the United States has, so that's something to consider as well. So I want to ask you this too. So demand is going up. We don't have new electricity sources. What does that do to prices?
Yeah, so and that's a really good question. I'm happy you asked. Is that when you have a free market system, supply and demand, right? The demand in the market dictates the price. It's very simple economics 101. And so at the end of the day, you have to remember, who are you competing with? If there's a limited quantity of electricity, and I have just my little home with my small family, I am competing with the tech giants of the world, the Amazons, the Metas, the Open AIs, the Anthropics, and their business model allows them to pay a lot more for energy than I am able to pay. Even if I were willing to pay, I'm not even sure I'd be able to pay as much as they're willing to pay, right? And that's because these AI models are so profitable. These social media sites are so profitable. And as energy becomes constricted, they're going to be willing to pay more. Actually, PJM just put out a really interesting article maybe a month or two ago talking about this exact issue of, are we going to have to switch to a model that is pay more if you want it? And that's not fair. That's not fair to the everyday people in this country, that you're now at risk of losing power because the tech giants of the world can pay more.
I mean, we've seen that with RAM prices or storage prices,
Yeah.
computer chip storage prices going up too. I mean, what's stopping from energy going up in the same way that RAM prices are going up? Let me just ask you one last thing here. So you offered a number of solutions already. What do you think should be the very first step towards those solutions that the city of New York, the state of New York, and anywhere else should take? The first step.
Yeah, the very first step, especially for New York City, is to get rid of this de facto battery ban. You need to allow people the right to protect themselves and their families. The government has no business telling people you cannot do this on your home. You have private property rights as a citizen. And look, at what point as people do we stop trusting the government to take care of our life? At what point do we stop trusting the utility to take care of us? We as Americans need to be empowered to make decisions that protect our family. So step number one, day number one, remove the red tape around these residential generation and battery collections, these backup batteries, and let people protect themselves. We have war in the Middle East that's probably never going away. We have AI data centers coming on faster than we can build massive generation sites. But that's not all of it, right? We also do need some large scale sites. We need to bring back some of these nuclear sites, bring back coal, bring on the gas pipelines. But at the end of the day, you cannot trust the utility or the government to protect your family in this scenario that we're in. And so you need to protect yourself, and that means having backup power.
Okay, Sam, well said today. So good to speak with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.